Guys, good morning and welcome to the podcast. So, in today's session, we're going to be talking about, you've heard a lot of mention of this, GLP-1s. So, GLP-1s, you'll hear them under the brand names Wegovy, Saxenda, Ozempic, names like that. So, traditionally, they were used as a type 2 diabetic medication, so a hyperglycemic medication for lowering blood sugar levels. But then it was noticed that they were actually, causing quite a lot of weight loss as well. So, of course, the pharmaceutical industry would jump on that and want to capitalize it, as they do, capitalize on it even. So today, in today's session, we're going to look at what are GLP-1s. Are they the wonder drug that the pharmaceutical industry would love us to believe? Or are they something that we can elicit by changing our diets, naturally have that same production of GLP-1? We look at what the research says in terms of the weight loss, the long-term side effects, the gastrointestinal issues, and then what is the natural alternative for sticking an injection in your stomach every week to reduce your appetite. Okay, let's have a look at it. You can probably tell by the tone I'm a little bit cynical when it comes to GLP-1s. I believe in some cases they might have utility if you really have severe food addiction and your only choice, instead of addressing the root cause, is to inject yourself in the stomach to just shut off your appetite. But I think in the vast majority of cases, altering your diet to kind of a lower carb, higher healthy fat and protein diet is much safer in the long run. Okay, let's have a look at this first. So what is a GLP-1? So GLP-1, just quickly, what the word means and what the acronym means is glucagon-like peptide agonist. So glucagon-like peptide agonist, which is basically a group of hormones, gut hormones known as incretins. They're produced in the gut that have the main thing they do is they reduce gastric emptying, so the speed at which your stomach empties food, which can make you feel fuller. And the other thing they do is increase production of GLP-1, glucagon-like peptide. And when they do that, the agonist means to copy or reproduce something. So glucagon-like peptide agonist, what it does basically in the brain is it bumps up the production of that hormone, GLP-1. It bumps up something called PPY, and it optimizes hormones known as ghrelin and leptin. So basically all of that comes together to reduce your appetite. Okay, let's look at some of the other effects. So a couple of things that it does do, I was saying at top left here where we see GIT in terms of gastric emptying, it slows down your gastric emptying and your GI motility, so food stays in there a little bit longer. In terms of your heart, it reduces your blood pressure. Now, the main reason it reduces your blood pressure is because it elicits weight loss as opposed to anything else. It also increases your heart rate, which I'm not sure I'd be too keen on doing. It increases in the kidneys natriuresis, which is water loss. And you've got other effects that it does around the body. Lowers hepatic glucose production as well. That's the production of sugar in your liver. So a couple of bits and pieces that it does. Let's look at the evidence for GLP-1s. And this is a huge, huge issue with GLP-1s, which the pharmaceutical industry are staying very quiet about. So if you lose weight, weight is it's an okay marker for health as a measure or proxy for your health. It's okay. Now, the reason I say that is if you're 14 stone and you go down to 9 stone, you might say, well, that's very obvious that that's a good thing, unless you've got metastatic cancer, unless you've got anorexia. There are situations whereby losing weight is not necessarily beneficial in the long run, or as beneficial as it may seem initially. One good example of that is if you do weight loss the wrong way, if you just cut calories, if you just switch off a signal in your brain that says you should eat and your body doesn't know what it should eat and just has a small bit as it goes along during the day, and you end up eating 600-700 calories, your body will actually metabolize muscle. It'll break down muscle. It's a condition known as sarcopenia, where the muscle starts to waste. Your body's trying to break it down in order to get glucose from it. So where that happens, in the long run, even though you lost a stone and a half, if 8 pounds or 9 pounds of that came from muscle, you were healthier before you started the program. By body composition, you were healthier before you started that program, before you injected yourself in the stomach with something like Ozempic or Saxenda, the GLP-1s. The reason for this is your basal metabolic rate, or the rate which your body runs at in terms of it's what we loosely refer to as metabolism when people say metabolism. If initially your body was requiring, I don't know, 2,000 calories. That's an average, kind of a broad generic number for the broad population. And then you lost quite a bit of muscle mass. your basal metabolic rate, or the rate that you burn calories at, is going to go way down. It might be down to 1400, 1500 calories now because you've lost muscle because of something you did. Now, if you go back to eating 2000 calories, because your appetite will stay much the same, you're going to put all the weight back on and more. And this is why just reducing calories and willing your way through it and starving yourself and doing loads of exercise, why it often results in rapid weight regain. A really good example of this, the obvious example, if you've heard of it before, is the Biggest Loser program in the States. So the Biggest Loser, if you're not familiar with it, was where they took morbidly obese individuals, 400, 500, 600 pounds, and they put them on a regime. But before they did, they made them sign an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, where they said, you can't talk about this, you can never go public with this or you'll be sued. Anyway, some people did. I think 30 or 40 of them did go public, whatever loophole they found they could eventually talk about it. And every single one of the ones that went public, I mean, it was 35, 40 people, regained all of the weight and more. Because if your body thinks that it should be burning 3,000 calories a day, which is about the right figure for someone who's morbidly obese, and then you give that person, and this is what they did in The Biggest Loser, you give them 700 calories a day and they exercise for 6 hours a day. I mean, they're fighting against their body. They've been put under almighty pressure, weighing themselves in their underwear every week for the entertainment of the public, which is not right. They're basically driving through willpower and kind of, been coerced and bullied into it. They're driving themselves into this weight loss because they're in a severe caloric deficit. Now, what your body says when it feels that type of starvation situation is it says, well, we usually burn 3,000 calories a day. If we continue to do that, I'm going to die. I'm going to run out of energy. So I'm going to down-regulate your metabolism now that you've lost all that muscle mass and you've lost all that weight. I'm going to down-regulate your metabolism, or your BMR, basal metabolic rate, to about 800 calories a day. So what happens all of those individuals when they come off after standing up in the scales and getting clapped at the end for everyone's entertainment and they're down 300 pounds is they put all the weight back on, because they go back to eating even 1,500, 2,000 calories a day. No matter how hard they try, they've destroyed their metabolism with that kind of severe, extreme yo-yo dieting type approach. So I say all of this to illustrate the point that your metabolism is really, really important. You don't want to go screwing with it with a chemical or a severe weight loss kind of approach like that. So muscle mass is really important. The more muscle mass you have, first of all, it's important for bone density. It's important for cardiovascular benefits. It's important for balance. One of the leading predictors of somebody dying 10, 15 years before they should is actually bone density. Not heart disease, not blood pressure. It's bone density once you get over about 60. Because if you think about it, we've all heard, and I've heard this numerous times, somebody passes away a couple of years after a bad fall, and you hear, what happened? And they say, well, I don't really know, that they had a fall and then everything went downhill after that. And the reason for that is being bedbound and often eating foods just to make you feel better and stuff. But in particular, being bedbound is a massive risk factor for cardiovascular disease, diabetes, cancer, and so on. So often a bad fall, breaking a hip or something like that, and not being able to move out of the bed for a year can be the beginning of the end for people who are already at risk of cardiovascular disease. Okay, let's take a look at what this study showed. So we know now it's important to keep muscle mass. It's really important that your muscle mass stays as high as possible. So the initial step one, what was known as Sustain 8 trial from semaglutide, and I read this paper when it came out and I thought, looks interesting. And I think the weight loss was something like 33, 34 pounds, something like that. So you read that and you think, look, we don't know the long-term effects. I see that weight loss with my patients all the time without any injections, just by changing the diet. And then we see this. The step 1 and Sustain 8 section of semaglutide, which is the GLP-1 trial, found 39 to 40% of the weight loss on GLP-1 drugs was muscle. 40% of the weight loss was muscle. Now, if somebody said to you, you can lose 20 pounds, you would say, amazing. If someone said to you, just so you know, half to 3/4 of a stone of that is going to be muscle, your muscle is going to be gone, you would say, that does not sound healthy at all. That sounds crazy. Now, while you look at the outcomes that these drugs report to say whether they're what we call efficacious or effective or not, the only thing they report on, and I think this is just ludicrous, it's wild, is weight loss. So they say, 35 pounds, which was 8% of body weight or 12% of body weight, whatever it ends up being in the particular individual. Therefore they're really effective and everyone should go on them. That's the spin put on it by the pharmaceutical industry. Now, the net result there, if you ask me, is if I lost 20 pounds, but 9 pounds of that, what's 40% of it? 8 pounds of that, 8 pounds of that, half a stone of it was muscle mass that was gone. I would say that I would know from my line of work that that's not good for you. So my body composition now has changed. I'm slightly more, I have slightly more body fat now relative to muscle mass than I did before I started the program. Now, just for clarity here, this is, I'm not saying that, God, losing some muscle mass is absolutely catastrophic and anything that elicits a little bit of muscle loss should be avoided. Typically on a standard kind of a low carb or caloric restriction program, you will see some muscle loss. I'm not saying that you won't lose muscle, but you shouldn't be losing 40% of the weight that drops off. 40% of it should not be muscle mass. That is, to my mind, massively worrying. And of course, now the pharmaceutical industry, you'll see it down here at the bottom, are looking to, oh, it doesn't say that there, sorry, but what that went on to say is that they're looking to find another drug now to try and preserve muscle mass. Just crazy stuff. Or you could just eat real food and you get the same result without the muscle loss. So this is really interesting. So I was saying that if you elicit weight loss, but you drop muscle mass at the same time, you're going to mess up somebody's metabolism. So if you look at what happened here, weight regain and cardiometabolic effects. Cardiometabolic just means risk of heart disease effects after withdrawal of semaglutide, the step 1 trial we'll see. 1 year after withdrawing the once weekly 2.4 milligrams semaglutide, that's the one every second doctor is prescribing for their patients. You see that participants regained 2/3, 66% of the weight they lost. So if we look at what happened here in the broader picture, let's say, for example, you lost, just try and keep kind of an even number here because I'm not great at maths. Let's say you lost 20 pounds, which wouldn't be bad. You lost 20 pounds. That'd be pretty good after a year. Again, you do it with a low carb diet, but 8 pounds of that was muscle loss. And of the 20 pounds that you lost, you regained about 12 or 13 of those pounds. So now you've lost an average of 6 or 7 pounds. And on average, 2 pounds of that, if not more, a little bit more, 2.5 pounds came from muscle loss. So the net fat loss that you saw was about 3 or 4 pounds over a year. And you've destroyed your muscle mass. You've potentially been one of the 50% of people who had extreme nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. I mean, there has to be a better way than this. So again, on the surface, if you're a company with what's known as a fiduciary responsibility to its shareholders and you're trying to spin this as some sort of amazing drug, all you want to say is you want to avoid these sort of outcomes, and you want to say, well, 35 pounds weight loss, seems to be promising and everyone should prescribe it. And everyone goes, okay, let's do that because there's loads of money and loads of papers behind this. But actually, the reality is that you're losing almost as much muscle as you are fat, and then you're going to regain 66% of the weight that you lost. So this is a kind of an interesting one in a sense, because I don't mean this to sound kind of insulting or kind of disingenuous, but it is what it is. The spin that the pharmaceutical industry will put on this, and we see this already in papers, is that because people are regaining 66% of the weight lost, this is a lifetime requirement of treatment. So if you lose the 40 pounds but you put 30 back on, well, you should just stay on it, which is just wild. Okay, so that's a good business model. Now, if we look at how to actually reduce your hunger, eliciting exactly the same response as injecting a GLP-1, exactly the same. Sorry, it's not identical. The reason it's not identical is because GLP-1, glucagon-like 1 peptides, are gut hormones known as incretins, which your body produces when you eat protein and fat, not when you eat sugar and carbohydrate. They drive it crazy. They actually suppress production of GLP-1. Now, what the GLP-1 agonists do, agonist meaning to kind of replicate or copy, is they copy what your gut would naturally do. So these gut incretins or hormones, they basically give your body a replica, or they kind of mimic, that's the better word. They mimic production of GLP-1. So they don't actually cause your body to produce more GLP-1. They just mimic production of it. So it tricks your body. Now, you will have a reduced appetite. You may have extreme nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. There's a 50% chance that you will. You'll probably regain 66 to 70% of the weight, and you will definitely damage your metabolism by taking a GLP-1 because you will lose muscle. Those things are not arguable. They're not up for debate. They're just stated as facts in the literature of the last couple of years. So this kind of spin that it's some sort of a wonder drug and everyone should take it is just, to me, it's just wild, knowing what I know from looking at even a quick look at the literature. Okay, so let's try and understand what foods will optimize production of GLP-1 naturally. Now, this will be as powerful, if not more powerful, than taking a GLP-1. This is not, can we kind of replicate it and get some sort of an effect? If we look at refined carbohydrates, when I say refined carbohydrates, we're talking here cereals, rice, granola, pasta, frozen pizzas, all that sort of stuff. Cereals, obviously things like crisps and chocolate and cakes and ice cream and all that other good stuff. What happens with those is all dietary carbohydrate, remember, is metabolized as glucose. So your blood sugar levels go up, your body produces a hormone called insulin, your blood sugar levels drop back down. Now, when your blood sugar levels are high, you're relatively full because you've got a good source of energy. The problem is glucose has a half-life, or how long it lasts, of about anywhere from an hour to kind of 2.5 hours. So if you eat a bowl of cereal, you'll feel, not even that full, you feel mildly full, and then you get this massive drop in your blood sugar levels, a pronounced drop because your body produces insulin, drops your blood sugar levels down. When your blood sugar levels go low, what happens 2.5 hours, 3 hours after you eat cereal or porridge or rice or pasta or any of those things, white bread roll, for example, even a brown bread roll, is you get this pronounced increase in your hunger hormones. The hunger hormone is known as ghrelin. The fullness hormone, they're kind of reductionist terms, but the fullness hormone is leptin. So when you're hungry, ghrelin goes up. When you're full, leptin goes up. So when you eat processed carbohydrate, if you have a bowl of cereal in the morning, blood sugars go up, your body metabolizes all carbohydrate as sugar, remember. Pancreas produces insulin, blood sugar levels go down, and your brain says, do it again. And you end up in this kind of vicious but perpetuating cycle of needing to eat every 2 hours, because the fuel that you're running on in the form of glucose or carbohydrates, which, by the way, your body doesn't require any carbohydrates. I'll cover that in another session. Only lasts 2 hours, so you're constantly hungry. And I remember looking back on, I followed a low-carb or ketogenic diet now for about 10, 11 years. And I remember looking back on just before I started it and thinking, why am I always hungry? So I would eat in the morning. I'd get up starving, so I'd have a bowl of cereal. I'd have a scone and a cappuccino on the way into work. I'd have a white bread roll with, hot chicken roll. Still miss them, if I'm being honest, a little bit. I'd have some sort of a snack in between my lunch and my dinner. I'd have my dinner. I would eat at about 9 o'clock, and then I'd be downstairs in the kitchen, because I'm just going to be totally honest here. And I'd be having a bowl of crunchy nut cornflakes at like 11:45 at night, because I was sitting in bed going, if I'm being honest, I'm still hungry. So that's what happens. That's the vicious perpetuating cycle of running on sugar and carbohydrate. Okay, so when you eat protein and fat, so this is if we move away from processed food and you eat meat, eggs, cheese, fruits, vegetables. There are some notable exceptions in vegetables like potatoes and sweet potatoes, which can drive your appetite even higher. But broadly speaking, whole foods, you optimize your hunger hormones. So you get a big boost in GLP-1. And this is really important, protein. If you increase your intake of protein, I'm not talking about protein powders, protein bars, they could do the opposite because they tend to have sugar in them. But things like breasted chicken, meat, unflavored Greek yogurt, nuts. There's evidence that pistachios will increase your GLP-1, macadamia nuts. So think nuts, full-fat dairy, meats, eggs, cheese. All of those will increase your body's own natural production of GLP-1 without causing muscle wastage, without causing explosive diarrhea and all those other things. Okay. So these are the foods that you want to avoid if you want a reduction in appetite. If you want a natural Ozempic alternative without all the horrible side effects and knowing that you'll be on it forever, injecting yourself in the stomach every week because of this quote-unquote wonder drug, eat less breads, rice, pasta, breakfast cereals, fizzy drinks, including the diet ones, because they do screw up your appetite hormones as well, cakes, pastries, starchy vegetables, and high sugar fruits. And we look at this and we think, well, it's no wonder that we can't stop eating, because I remember watching someone present on this years ago, Dr. Sarah Hallberg, talking about this is how you reduce appetite, you reduce fatty liver, you reverse type 2 diabetes. And I remember thinking, well, that's going to go down real well for my guys being Irish, because that is that's the majority of our diet, or has been at least traditionally and culturally. So these are the foods that will decrease your appetite. These are the ones that are going to increase production of GLP-1, glucagon-like peptide, increase a hormone as well called PPY, increase a hormone called ghrelin, which is leptin, which is your fullness hormone, and decrease production of ghrelin. So optimizing all of your hunger hormones in your gut incretins. And they are meats. You want to eat more meats. You want to eat more fish and seafood, although I think the GLP-1 profile or production in meats is relatively higher than fish and seafood. Cheese, so full fat cheeses, green vegetables or any vegetables that grow above the ground for that matter. Full fat dairy, so things like full fat unsweetened Greek yogurt with things like berries, real butter, although you won't have a whole lot to put it on, over vegetables, eggs, and good fats like avocado, olive oil, and so on. So unsaturated fats as well. Both saturated and unsaturated fat have similar profiles in terms of GLP-1 production, but prioritizing protein and filling up on fats and moving away from processed refined carbohydrates is going to optimize your body's own natural production of GLP-1 as opposed to going down the route of my appetite is out of control, therefore I have to inject myself in the stomach every week. I promise you the appetite reduction you see on a low carb diet is really difficult to get your head around. It's profound. So how I know that somebody is becoming what we refer to as fat adapted or adapted to this new way of eating is I'll ask them the same question every week. How's your appetite? And they'll say after week 1, yeah, it was pretty rough there 3 or 4 days in. And around the 12 to 15 or 16th day in, I always on the second session, if somebody has been compliant with the diet, I say, notice any reduction in your appetite? They say, yeah, I got to the point that I had breakfast and I forgot to eat until 4 o'clock. Like, it's really profound. And the reason that happens is kind of twofold. One, through therapeutic carbohydrate restriction, you're teaching your body to understand how to use ketones for fuel. So ketones like beta hydroxybutyrate are fats broken down. And your body can do that with exogenous fat from the outside, like your diet, or it can just transition to burning body fat and deriving ketones from that as well. So we just notice the signal to the brain is, I don't mind if you eat or not because I have a energy source coming in here that I can run on. So that's the first reason why your appetite reduces. Another reason that your appetite reduces is what we're speaking about here today. More protein, more healthy fat equals more GLP-1, slower gastric emptying, and basically increased feelings of satiety, so feeling full all the time. And it's really, really pronounced when you change your diet. So guys, I just wanted to present what a GLP-1 is, what the potential side effects are, what the long-term ramifications of the muscle loss that we're seeing in the literature is, and how there might be a much more viable alternative that I've seen in my own clinical practice day in, day out, people reporting weight loss and massive reductions in their appetite without all of those unintended, as we refer to, iatrogenic side effects of the medications. Guys, I hope you found this useful. Please do like and subscribe. It does help us more than you think. And we'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.